I've carried a lot of weapons in my time, and the longer you stay in this line of work, when the work shifts from controlled entry to holding a line or pushing through long stretches without a pause, you start thinking differently about what's in your hands. And that's where the FN Minimi makes its case. The first time you pick it up, the weight is the conversation starter. Not overwhelming, but honest. Like a reminder that this isn't a rifle and won't pretend to be. The balance sits forward, pulling your stance into a deliberate lean, and the grip doesn't flatter you with comfort. It just tells you to settle in and respect the length of the fight. What stands out early is how alive it feels during continuous fire. Not violent, not erratic, just a steady push that demands attention every second you stay on the trigger. It won't disappear into your kit the way lighter tools do. You always know you're carrying it. And that's part of the deal with guns that feed for longer than a heartbeat. Long drills show you its habits quickly. How the sling rubs when you're tired. How the barrel heat creeps into your focus. How the bulk catches on door frames and vehicle edges if you forget to shrink your profile. It's not a weapon you stroll with. It's one you manage. But once you settle into open ground or long corridors where the fight stretches horizontally instead of vertically, the Minimi starts to feel like a stabilizing force. It anchors a team's movement, fills gaps that rifles can't, and gives rhythm to pressure when everything else is scattered. In tight spaces, it becomes more burden than benefit, dragging you off balance and slowing transitions. But that's not its world. It's built for the moments when you need presence rather than finesse, when keeping heads down matters more than elegance. It stayed in rotation because teams needed that reliability. The kind that comes from a gun meant for people who understand that sustaining fire is its own form of responsibility. It belongs to those who accept weight, heat, and constant management as the cost of giving everyone else room to move. Shifting from a gun that leans on volume to one that favors cleaner handling changes the whole rhythm of a team, and that's where the HK-MG4 comes in. It feels different the moment you shoulder it. Lighter, more neutral in balance, almost eager to move with you instead of dragging you into a fixed stance. The controls sit where your hands expect them to be. Nothing dramatic, nothing that slows you down, and that first impression builds a quiet sort of trust. You don't wrestle with it, you guide it. But once you start putting real time behind the trigger, its honesty shows. The recoil isn't harsh, but it has a quick snap that reminds you you're still running a belt-fed system. And after long strings, the front end warms faster than you'd like. On patrols or extended training, you notice how the bipod shifts slightly under uneven ground, or how the sling wants to twist the gun outward when you're tired. Little things, never catastrophic, but always there, nudging your patience. Where the MG4 earns its place is in fast, shifting terrain. Places where you need suppressive capability without sacrificing mobility. Moving between broken walls, weaving through low cover, climbing narrow steps. It stays manageable and doesn't fight you. It doesn't punish you for firing from awkward positions or having to transition quickly from carry to ready. Out in wide open spaces, though, the same lightness becomes a limit. It doesn't settle as firmly, and you feel the wind and your own pulse pushing the muzzle around more than you'd like during longer engagements. Still, for teams that prioritize speed and flexible posture, the MG4 fits naturally. It's for the guys who don't want their weapon dictating their movement, who value a platform that stays predictable even when everything around them shifts. It doesn't dominate a fight, but it moves with you. And sometimes that's the difference between getting stuck and getting through. When you move from something that tries to stay light on your shoulder to a gun that carries real authority, the shift is immediate. and that's the HK-MG5. You feel it the moment you bring it up. Heavier, thicker through the frame, built with a kind of confidence that doesn't ask for your permission. It doesn't balance itself for you. It expects you to meet it halfway. The stock settles with a solid, deliberate weight, and the controls feel sturdy rather than quick. First impression is simple. This is a machine that wants to be treated like one. Once you start working with it day after day, the details unfold. The recoil isn't violent, but it has depth, a slow push that rolls through your shoulder instead of snapping. After a few long strings, you feel the heat lingering in the receiver, radiating into your grip even with gloves on. Carrying it on long movements becomes a negotiation. The sling bites harder, the bulk tugs against your vest, and clearing tight corners takes more planning than instinct. It never pretends to be nimble. It asks you to be deliberate. But in the environment it was built for, the MG5 makes sense in a way few guns do. Set it on a solid surface, brace into the ground, and the whole thing locks into a steady rhythm that feels almost calm. In open approaches, on overwatch positions, along roads or ridgelines where you need a gun that keeps pushing without complaint, it becomes a foundation for everyone else's movement. It doesn't care about wind, rain, dust, or long hours. It keeps feeding, keeps driving, keeps giving the team room to work. Bring it into confined spaces, though, and the same strengths turn into dead weight. It's slow through doorways, awkward in vehicles, and demands both hands when you wish you could spare one. It's not for close work, not for fast entries, not for fluid repositioning. It's for the guys who hold the line, who anchor a sector, who carry responsibility more than speed. The MG5 stayed in service because it brings stability where chaos usually wins, and the people who choose it know exactly what they're signing up for. Weight, effort, discipline. It's not a weapon you pick because it's easy. It's a weapon you pick because you're the one expected to keep everything around you steady. When you leave the heavier Western builds and move into guns shaped by a different design philosophy, the tone changes, and the RPK-16 shows that right away. It feels closer to a stretched-out rifle than a true machine gun. Lighter, quicker to shoulder, more willing to follow your movement than to anchor it. The first impression is simplicity. Familiar controls, predictable balance, nothing that slows you down. But in daily work, that same simplicity cuts both ways. The recoil has a dry pulse to it, not harsh but insistent. And after long strings, you feel the front end start to wander unless you're locked in. The gun moves with you easily, sometimes too easily, especially during rapid transitions or when you're firing unsupported. Where it finds its place is in fast, aggressive pushes, stairwells, short alleys, tight compounds where you need sustained fire without the drag of a full-weight LMG. It reacts quickly, settles quickly, and doesn't punish you for shooting on the move. Out in open ground, though, the limits show. It doesn't plant itself the way heavier guns do, and the light frame starts to drift under extended fire. Still, it earned its keep with teams that wanted mobility first and were willing to manage the rest. The RPK-16 belongs to the guys who move fast, cut angles, and value a gun that behaves more like an overbuilt rifle than a belt-fed machine. Stepping from the newer pattern into a more traditional frame, the RPK-74M brings a different kind of familiarity, heavier through the front, steadier in the hands, and built with a certain stubbornness that you feel the moment you lift it. It isn't quick, not the way lighter variants try to be. And the first thing you notice is how the weight pulls the barrel down in a slow, predictable arc. The controls are exactly where you expect them. Nothing surprising, Nothing refined, just functional steel and wood pattern polymer doing the job they were meant to do. In routine work, its character shows early. The recoil has a smoother roll than the newer models. The gun settles into your shoulder with a kind of old-school patience, and long strings feel more controlled, as long as your stance is honest. Still, the weight adds up. Carry it through uneven ground or narrow corridors, and you feel every ounce dragging at your arms, every step asking for more effort than it should. But when you set up in a fixed position or brace against low cover, the RPK-74M becomes a quiet asset. Not fast, not flashy, but stable in a way that lets you focus on everything else. It's not built for rushing stairwells or weaving through tight interiors. It's built for giving shape to a fight, holding a line, covering movement with steady, predictable fire. That's why it stayed in use for so long. It suits the operators who prefer rhythm over speed, who don't mind the weight if it means the gun behaves the same way every time they bring it up. It's the choice of someone who values consistency more than convenience, and who understands that some tools earn trust slowly, but keep it once they do. Moving into a completely different design philosophy, the QJB-95 announces itself immediately. Light, shifted toward the rear, built around compactness. First impressions are odd. The balance pulls the barrel upward while the stock seems to push you forward. The controls take getting used to, and you feel that in the first minutes on the range. In daily work, it behaves peculiarly. Recoil is short, sharp, transitions are quick, but every jolt reminds you the center of mass lives closer to your shoulder than ahead. In tight spaces, that works in your favor. It doesn't snag, doesn't hang over door frames, and lets you shift positions almost as fast as with a standard rifle. Step into open terrain, though, and the lightness turns against you. The barrel drifts, your pulse interferes with sight. Long strings demand iron discipline. Still, it stays with those who value compactness and don't mind its quirks. It's a weapon for people operating in confined areas, where maneuverability and speed outweigh the need for long, stable lines of fire. Then you pick up the QJB-191, and the contrast is immediate. Still compact, still rooted in the same lineage, but calmer in the hands. More settled, less eager to tip or wander. The first thing you notice is the balance. It shifts forward just enough to feel natural, taking away that upward pull the older pattern never hid. The controls feel more intuitive, less like you're negotiating with the weapon, and more like you're just working with it. Day-to-day use shows a smoother character. The recoil is shorter and cleaner. The gun tracks more predictably during bursts, and the front end doesn't float as much when you move between positions. You still feel the lightness, and on long strings it reminds you of its limits. The frame heats fast, and the muzzle needs a steady hand to stay honest. But in close quarters or cluttered terrain, it moves with a confidence the earlier model never fully managed. It slips through doorways, settles quickly after transitions, and doesn't punish you for firing without a perfect stance. Out in open stretches, it's serviceable but not dominant. The weight savings mean you work harder to keep shots stable over time. Even so, it earned a place with operators who want something agile but less temperamental. A middle ground between pure compactness and genuine control. The QJB-191 fits the ones who move often, adjust constantly, and need a gun that keeps pace without fighting them for every inch. Moving into heavier, more grounded territory again, the Negev NG7 hits your hands with a kind of confidence that doesn't need explanation. It feels dense, settled, built to stay where you put it. The first impression is authority without drama. The weight sits low, The stock locks in clean, and the controls fall exactly where instinct wants them. Nothing fancy, nothing soft. Once you start working with it regularly, its temperament shows. The recoil comes as a deep, controlled shove rather than a snap, and the gun stays truer through long strings than you expect from something this compact for its class. Heat builds, but not in a way that steals your focus. It rises slow, giving you enough time to manage it. Movement is where the compromises surface. The NG7 isn't eager in tight interiors. It drags on corners, asks for deliberate footwork, and makes you think twice about fast pivots in cramped stairwells. But give it broken streets, rooftop edges, vehicles at odd angles, anywhere you shift between short pushes and bursts of suppression, and it falls into rhythm with you. It settles quickly, absorbs your breathing, and forgives less than perfect positions. Out in wide, open approaches, it shines even brighter, planting itself with a stability that feels more like a mounted gun than something you're carrying. Still, the weight never disappears. On long movements, you feel it in your spine, in the pull of the sling, in the way it insists on being managed instead of simply carried. It's a gun for operators who accept that trade. People who value a platform that answers with certainty every time they lean into it. The NG7 belongs to those who anchor a fight rather than chase one, who build pressure instead of sprinting through it, and who understand that some tools reward patience with control. Finishing up the belt-fed section, the Ultimax 100 Mark VIII closes the loop with a different sort of honesty. Light for its class, smooth in rhythm, and almost deceptive in how easy it feels to move with. The first lift surprises you. It doesn't demand respect through weight. It earns it through consistency. The balance is almost neutral, letting your hands guide it rather than forcing a stance. On daily work, it shows its temperament quietly. The recoil is soft, manageable, almost lazy compared to other LMGs, and long strings are less punishing on the shoulders. The gun reacts predictably through transitions, and you quickly learn how to adjust your movements to its flow. Tight quarters reveal its limits. Corners and narrow stairwells require care, and it doesn't anchor as firmly as heavier platforms when you need absolute steadiness. But in most operational spaces, open lanes, compound sweeps, or moving suppression positions, it delivers exactly what you hope for. Controlled bursts, minimal fuss, and reliable performance. It stayed in rotation because it offered a balance that few others did. Enough firepower to influence the fight, enough lightness to keep moving, and enough predictability to trust without overthinking. The Ultimax 100 Mark VIII belongs to operators who prize rhythm and reliability over raw presence, who want a gun that doesn't fight them but keeps them honest, and who understand that in the end, survival is about consistency, not flair.